Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch, a weekly show amplifying the voices of the Virginia grassroots. Each week, we provide engaging conversations about politics, culture, and women making change. Produced by the unstoppable women of Network Nova, our motto is, when we vote, we win. The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and show us some love and become a sponsor through Patreon. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
So everybody, it is August 25th and welcome to the Friday Power Lunch. I'm Catherine White, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action. We're amplifying the voice of the grassroots to get things done. And yes, to make politics fun. So I'm so excited. We rolled in today singing about how to make sure fascists lose because abortion's on the ballot. And we have some great guests to sort of frame up what the heck is going on in Virginia at our border, and some really great issues around how do we talk about abortion. So first up, I'm excited to recognize two guests, and they're both from the State Line Abortion Access Partners. SLAP. I love that. Kimberly Smith is here. You're the founding board member. Welcome, Kimberly. How are you doing? And you ready to slap back some fascists?
We totally are. We are down for it.
What do you got? What's your tool?
Grassroots activism, working locally in our community, speaking out in your to your neighbors. That's where the change has to start.
Yeah, I have to say, I love the slap. And I'd like to bring up at the same time your co-partner, your board president of the State Line Abortion Access Partners, CHERYL Wade Hazlick. CHERYL, welcome.
CHERYL doesn't have her video on. Oh, there, she just turned it on. Great.
Were you busy running? CHERYL, okay. It's okay. Anyways, Kimberly, I'm glad that you're here today with CHERYL. We're really excited to talk about this.
Thank you. I'm having a little trouble.
It's okay, CHERYL. We'll take care of it.
Yes. What, can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you. Hello. I just want to say hello. How are you doing?
Well, I think we're having some poor rural broadband.
Problems, and nothing new when you do Zoom and you live out in the furthest tip of
Appalachia.
Appalachia. Coming back at you. Well, CHERYL, we'll circle back and hopefully we can
you hear me?
Yeah, it's okay, CHERYL. We're gonna wait and we'll get this settled. So when you do your segment, welcome. So thank you, Kimberly, for being here. And let's get up our next person, the Reverend Laura M. George from the Oracle Institute. Oh, talk about somebody that has been fighting fascists. How are you doing? Tell us about what's going on out there at the Peace Pentagon. Tell us about what's behind you.
Well, this is our headquarters. It's the Peace Pentagon, and we like to ask people rhetorically at this point, do you know Virginia has two Pentagons? So yes, we are fighting the good fight down here in a rural area that is very prone to being prey for Texas Right to Life, the Federalist Society. And when you're ready, I'm going to fill you in on what's going on in Grayson County, Virginia.
I can't wait because I just love it when you think about the Pentagon's over here and you're talking about the tip of Virginia. You were deep down at the very edges of the border, correct?
Yes, I'm only about 10 miles from North Carolina. We are surrounded by the abortion ban states. Right. We think, other than it's us in Bristol, we're the southernmost outpost for progressive values in an area that is totally MAGA. Democrats typically have no chance of getting elected in our county. We've planted the white flag here for Team Light.
Yeah, I love it. So great you're here, because I have to say that I know maybe some people know about what's happening at the border, but we always think it's Texas or this border of Virginia. So much is going on to talk about here. So we're so glad you're here. It's going to be a great show. Thank you for coming, and we'll be talking to you real shortly. So great, Laura. Thank you. All right. What's exciting is we know there's an election, obviously, and we have three wonderful candidates here. I want to start with Emily Scott, candidate for Senate District 1. Hello, Hello, Emily. How are you doing? How's life going? And you got your fascist kind of wife beater on? What do you got?
I've got my button on, says
Button on.
candidate Emily Scott. We're doing really well up here. We're getting out, we're seeing people.
Right.
And interestingly enough, I have had only one negative response since the campaign started when I talk about running on a woman's right to choose. And I actually openly say the word abortion, and I don't get any negative feedback. I've had one negative, and I'm just amazed that that is the response. And
Yeah.
you know, it's we are in one of the reddest parts of Virginia. So I'm real excited about the fact that people, women mostly, are responding, and some men.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I can't wait to talk about this because I think there is a sea change in the language and so forth that people are, it's obviously been out there now for a couple of years since Roe. So I think this is something that really is more normal to talk about too. So glad that you're here. And it was great to see you since the Women's Summit. You look great, and I'm excited. So I also want to bring up your two other your peers. Jade Harris is here, candidate for Senate District. Hello, Jade. It's great to see you. Senate District 3. How are you doing?
Great. Hey, everybody. Awesome to be here today.
You loving Friday? Friday is working out for you. Have a big weekend ahead. Are you planning any kind of big activities?
Yeah, it's hard to keep them all straight at this point, but I just go by what's on my calendar. And when the little alert gives me 30 minutes, I go.
Yeah, good. Well, it's so important what we're talking about when we're talking about abortion on the ballot. And I'm interested to find out, what are you doing out in your community? And we're going to talk about the uniqueness of all these different districts you're in. And speaking of unique, I would love to bring up, I would call her an old friend, if I may, Jennifer Woofter. Great to see you back. When I heard you were running again, you're in the House Delegate, seat 52. How are you doing today? And how are you feeling about life in general?
I am doing great and feeling like this topic today could not be more pertinent.
Right.
Every day is a good day to talk about our right to control our own bodies and our right to not have the government interfering in personal medical decisions. But man, you guys timed it well today.
Yeah, we're good like that. I know, it's really important. I think it's a topic I could talk about every day until we all see this get right again. Because it is really, when we really unpack today, it's going to really come clear to people that our fight has just really started in so many ways. But exciting is always to see people doing the good fight and out there running. And I know it's hard. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. So thank you for stepping up. And we're excited to talk to you in a little bit. So keep in the room with us. Keep ready. We're ready to go. All right. So yes, I can't believe again, it is August 25th. And it's just amazing to think that the summer is gone. And we all know, if you're activists, you do election stuff, your tennis shoes are ready to go, right? You're thinking of September, October. So that's going to be also throughout the next several weeks before we get to the election. It will be about power packs and who's running. It will be about canvassing and the different things we are going to be doing. But today we just don't have Louisa Borowski like we usually do, who gives us this updates. And Fennell is continuing her education. So she has the day off, but she is busier than usual. Ready, just doing her schoolwork. So if you're out there, Fennell, I miss you, and we'll see you next week on the show. So again, here we are in the show, rules of the road. We know this topic can be is a topic that people want to hear about, and we want you to talk about it in the chat. But if there's anything negative or really goes south, or people just decide to pick a fight, we will toss you out, because we want to learn, we want to have a community, but we don't need super negativity. So we will just toss you out with a bye-bye. And then later, our favorite part, the after chat. And if you go into the after chat, that's where it really happens, where people can just really talk about what's on their mind. Our guests sometimes stay, and if you can stick around, guests, please do, because I think there's going to be a lot to talk about today. And lastly, we have to talk about ourselves. So hopefully you are a patron, and if you aren't a patron, why aren't you? Why not help us support the show? Think about it. Go to our site. We'll put our link in there. Look at the different levels of how to support us. And also, we're going to talk later about maybe even you want to join us on the show and become part of the team. But in the meantime, yeah, think about becoming a patron. It's a lot of fun. All right. So not having my sidekick here is always hard, but let's start the first segment. And I want to come out of the gate showing a video that you may not have seen yet. And it's the House Caucus that's put this video out, and it's called Take It From Them.
Tennessee's new abortion ban.
West Virginia's sweeping abortion ban.
It's happening all around us.
South Carolina,
Florida, Texas,
Kentucky, Mississippi. Women facing the death penalty for having an abortion.
MAGA Republicans in Richmond want Virginia to be next.
I would support a 100% ban.
Defunding Planned Parenthood. A total abortion ban. No exceptions. Women and doctors in jail. You don't have to look far to know where MAGA Republicans want to take Virginia. Just look what's happening around us.
Well, let's take a look at what's happening around us. I love to bring up Kimberly Smith, founding board member of State Line Abortion Partners, and also her board president, CHERYL WADE HAZLIK. Well, hopefully her audio is working. If not, we're going to have to just lean into that somehow. This happens.
Her video isn't showing, so I can't bring her up. So as soon as she turns it on.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll get her ready. Okay, Kimberly, you're the best person to just set this up. I'd like to talk about, let's go back to the very beginning, before Roe was overturned. And let's start there for our audience to give them the idea what really is happening in your town in Bristol before Roe and then now. So go right, you just take it away.
Happy to do it. So, Bristol is on the Tennessee-Virginia border. We are a twin city, half in Virginia, half in Tennessee. And amazingly, Tennessee had a abortion provider for 40 years in our small town, which is almost a miracle in this part of the country. But, when the Alito leak happened and it was very clear what was about to happen, the reproductive rights movement as a whole started scrambling, and clinics were moving across state lines to try to mitigate the impact on abortion, especially in states where we knew it was going to disappear. And Bristol was one of those. So that clinic was able to move 1 mile from the Tennessee side to the to the Virginia side, and it was actually pretty seamless. This new clinic was able to open and continue offering abortion care. However, I think because of the nature of Bristol, it really captured public attention. There was a lot of press because of kind of the uniqueness of this particular situation. And of course, very soon after, the attacks started coming, both from anti-abortion protesters, but also this anti-abortion ordinance movement that started. So since October of last year, Bristol, Virginia has now endured 3 waves of abortion ordinance attempts, all coming from outside of our community. I mean, there might be internal support, but these have been coming either from Richmond or from Texas. And in the midst of this, we've had a very strong group of people who had been working in support of the abortion provider. And as all of this was unfolding, we really realized that we needed to take a very public stand as people from the community who were supporting abortion access. So that was sort of the origin of State Line Abortion Access Partners. We both do kind of patient care and advocacy for people who are coming into our community for abortion care, and then also doing very public work to fight against these abortion ordinances. And, I think the real lesson here is that just because you may be in a blue state, and I said this not about Virginia, but many other people that I talk to, you think there's this safety that abortion is safe in your community. But these anti-abortion extremists never cared about state lines. And so now they're chipping away at what they consider like the weakest places, which are the very red areas of Virginia.
No, I think that's the point for, and you made this when we were doing our pre-interviews too. I mean, this situation at the border really mirrors a national reality after Roe has fallen. And it's sort of what we see. It's almost like whack-a-mole with the different laws, how they're using them all around to make sure that they can just shut down any kind of really care, not only abortion care, but reproductive care for women. And, it's in geography across, the board, we see a microcosm, they're at the border and these small cities, and this isn't the first time. So I'd like to talk about, like, there's this outside influence coming in, and a person you mentioned is Mark Lee Dickinson. Tell me about this Mark Lee, who Mark Lee is, and why we should know about some of these partners at the border doing this, or who started this, coming out of Texas, it seems like to me, correct?
Mark Lee Dixon is from Texas. He's the president of East Texas Right to Life, and he was very instrumental in getting the SB 8 Texas bounty in place, and also just doing this sanctuary city movement across Texas. Now, this is a great, Reverend Laura will be able to tell you a lot about him, because that is the ordinance that she's fighting in Grayson County. Right. We also had people coming from Richmond, which was the Family Foundation, and they were introducing a zoning ordinance. They did that in October. It was successfully fought off. Then Mark Lee came to town. We fought him off, and now the Family Foundation is back. So they just keep coming. But again, these are not people who are these pushes are not coming from within our community. They're coming from the outside.
Well, right. And this, I'd like to turn to Cheryl. And Cheryl, we're glad you're back and we can hear you. First of all, welcome. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
can
just
you hear me?
Slow. Don't worry about it. Just talk and I'll let you know. But what I want you to do is talk about, you're an 8-year resident. You actually live in Bristol. And let's get to talk about the zoning and what's going on at the city. Because what people don't know is, let's talk about what's happening at how they're using the city council, not for parking tickets, not for garbage pickup, but they're trying to do a zoning ordinance to make a sanctuary city. Tell us about that.
So at least 6 to 8 times these right to lifers have come in, signed up, allowed to speak on non-agenda items. Eventually, the city council restricted it to a half hour and allowed Bristol, Virginia residents to speak first, which was great. So the small group of defenders and the small group became select. We have been coming every time they come to speak our side and to speak actually more truths as their beliefs and point out that they don't speak for the Bristol, Virginia citizenship. And then we have our boots on ground. We're defending at the clinic, protecting patients, helping out with that. So we really do point out the people that are here not represented by you, which they come out and say, we represent the people of Bristol, Virginia, but they don't have an explanation for that. So we really need to show that there are local people that do stand in opposition, and had we not done that, there would have been no one from Bristol, Virginia that was speaking on behalf of pro-choice people, the women. We had to be there. We were there last Tuesday. So the good news is last Tuesday, there was another attempt to introduce an ordinance on sanctuary city zoning, no more abortion clinics, the one existing candidate, and hopefully due to partly our influence, that thing, they couldn't even get the motion entered. The city council, no one chose to second it. So it's dead again for right now.
Yeah. So Kimberly, any follow up on that? And Cheryl, thank you. Your audio is it's okay. You may want to turn your video off. Let's just see if that helps. Because sometimes for you, turn your video off and then it sometimes help with your audio. So Kimberly, any follow up on that I know was hard to hear?
Okay,
A little better, but that's okay. Just wait 1 second. Kimberly, any follow-up on that you'd like to jump in there?
Sure. Just that, you know, especially when you are in a rural community and our city council is bipartisan, you know, they don't run on any particular platform, but, you know, 80% of our community voted for Trump in the last election. So,
right.
You know, it's difficult for people to make stands on these issues. But if there is at least voices that are speaking against it, they can then say that, you know, this isn't a uniform opinion in our community that abortion should be banned. So by speaking out, you're helping give them the space to kind of push back on this. And it may not necessarily be on the reasons we would want it to be, like, you know, women have rights, but, you know, just that it's bad for the community. And I think what our city council people have been trying to say, and certainly the mayor, is that this is not a city, this is not a decision that anyone should be making on the local level. This is a state decision. And by our people from our group, and then even without, since we've started speaking, we have had other community members also speak at these city council meetings. We're giving our elected officials just the more assurance that they can keep pushing these ordinances off. So I think that's been very important.
Right. And Cheryl, anything to add? Let's see how your audio is now.
Is it better?
Yes, way better. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, those rural communities. Yeah, and I think we just have to continue being boots on the ground. With SLAT, we have abortion in our name because we want that front and center, but we're finding partners and we're reaching out. We're like the mothership, and we're finding places where we can put things in place, education, birth control, Plan B, condoms. So we're finding those people that are afraid to speak and don't think they have partners, that they find we're here. And that makes them more willing to step up and get involved and getting a little more vocal.
Yeah, I love you talked about, you just were really passionate about the partner element of this, correct?
Absolutely. That's why we're SLAP. P is for partners.
P is for partners. I love that. Well, no, this is good. And I think what our audience needs to understand is that it feels like, to me, like, especially after Roe fell, those some of this stuff that would have been unconstitutional when Roe was there, that the laws, you know, you couldn't have a undue burden to get access to these, you know, to abortion and so on. Now that is gone. And so it seems like to me, they're trying everywhere to go and, you know, stop access, using zoning, I don't know what, give them the benefit, but very creative ways to figure out how to just shut things down for women. And this is very concerning. And so I'm so glad you're calling attention to this. And you can put in the chat if there's any ways, I think we have already done, for people to partner with you, as we say. But let's bring up to this conversation, so people get another idea. We want to bring up, hello, the Reverend Lord George. Welcome again, the Executive Director of the Oracle Institute. And I just think that interesting about this fight is that, why is Grayson different? We're talking about, you're way down on the border, but again, the little whack-a-mole, they're coming at this at a different angle in Grayson. Set this up for the audience. What's happening?
Yes, they are coming at it at a different angle. They're using a federal law called the Comstock Act. And to set this up properly, it's also the lawsuit that's pending that everybody's following. Let me just give you a real brief description of what this act does. So it was passed way back in 1873. And originally it was prohibiting pornography, but it also included birth control and supplies and medications for abortion. It's still on the books, but over the years, it's been rolled back. So like in 1915, physicians were exempted. In 1965, the Supreme Court said it doesn't apply to contraception anymore. And then in December of 2022 is when the Federal Justice Department reported or issued a memorandum in which they said this doesn't apply to either senders or recipients of abortion medications like Plan C, provided there's no illegal intent. So it's never been repealed. Shame on the Democrats. It's still on the books. And what's happening now is that the evil geniuses on the right are trying to use the Comstock Act to not only attempt to prevent a nationwide use of the males for Plan C, now they're targeting rural communities like ours, and they're trying to get local governments to do what the federal government's not doing yet, which is enforce the Comstock Act. So the big lawsuit is this Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine in Texas. It's the FDA case. It's trying to ban the mifepristone. And in that suit at the lower level, the Texas District Court judge did say that the FDA failed to follow their own processes, and the Comstock Act is mentioned. Now, the Fifth Circuit just last week affirmed the lower court decision, and one of the three justices relied heavily on the Comstock Act. So it's headed for the Supreme Court. It's exceedingly relevant. And what's happening is that the Federalist Society, this attorney, John Mitchell, and Mark Lee Dixon, they're going around the country and they're trying to pass local Comstock Act ordinances. And now they're doing it in Virginia. So here, they've appeared a few times. Dixon has actually spoken at our Board of Supervisors and in private session with them, I recently learned. So they're trying to get the county to pass this ordinance. And if the county agrees, there's supposedly a indemnity agreement. I've not seen it, but they're saying they'll cover the county if the county is sued. So we've got some, they want to use Grayson County, Virginia as a test case in a blue state.
Or the Supreme Court too. I mean, we're talking about, this is intentional. And so when we're looking at this stuff, I think we always have to look at the bigger picture, right? That's why it's so important what's happening there and calling attention to it. So tell us, and because we'll affect blue states, can you just sort of just remind people again why this is so important? Because you don't have an abortion clinic in Grayson. It's not about shutting down a clinic like over in Bristol.
Right. We don't have an abortion clinic here. I think there's one church in particular, an evangelical church, which welcomed Mark Lee Dixon. And it's this church in particular, although some of the other evangelical churches are joining on, that's trying to get this ordinance passed. Now, this is a criminal ordinance. I want to say that again. This is a criminal ordinance. It would be a class 1 misdemeanor with jail up to a year, a $2,500 fine. And they are trying to get our local government to enforce the Comstock Act, which means our local police would have to be involved. So on multiple levels, it's ludicrous. Virginia is a Dillon rule state, so legally they can't do this. They can't legislate in an area that the state has already legislated. And in Virginia, we still follow basically the Roe trimester schemata. The other reason this is going to fail from a legal standpoint is based on the Virginia Constitution, which underscores religious freedom. And ironically, the Oracle Institute's mission statement is the Virginia Act for Religious Freedom. So we're also coming at this from a religious standpoint because it's clear all our Board of Supervisors meeting turned into Jesus revivals now. It's clear this is religiously motivated.
Yeah, well, they're using this, it's a part of this whole attack we see with religious. It's kind of perverting this idea of, how we see them talking about freedom of speech, for instance, how they're saying, that means that they could just lie and do anything. And I think also with, some of these laws, using zoning, using anything, right, to overturn this. But this freedom of religion is used to discriminate. We've seen it in the case that went to the Supreme Court when the football coach was, he protected speech to just be able to talk about religion to players. We saw it in the website design thing recently where, you could discriminate against somebody in LGBTQ if you have a business and you don't want to serve them. We see doctors in that FDA case where they, again, if they don't morally the religion, they don't have to do it. It seems like a total slippery slope for a lot of reasons, but because now we've seen it, some cases now this being used for just even not working on certain days. So, but when I love talking to you about this, you're going to turn this on its head. Tell us about what you're seeing about how we can fight back using that same, reasoning that religious freedom allows us to do what we want as well.
Yes. Roe was decided under the 14th Amendment. No First Amendment argument was put forward back then. And I am one of the ministers and attorneys, and there are many ministers I'm learning who also have a Juris Doctor, who believe that our best path, because right now we're playing whack-a-mole in each state, but our best path forward for a national right, a pro-choice statute, is the religious argument. And that would even include atheists, by the way.
Right.
Because what fundamentalist Christians are saying is that life begins at conception. All right, Jewish people don't agree with that. Muslim people don't agree with that. For Jewish people, it's first breath. It's literally birth. For most Muslims, the scholars have determined that it takes 120 days for the fetus to become ensouled. And then atheists don't believe in a soul at all. So that is their religion. So what we're trying to do is get a coalition together based on this argument. It's called Women of Faith and Fury. I'm going to put the link in our chat.
Okay.
And it's a very solid argument that would apply nationwide rather than fighting all these individual lawsuits now, not only in each state, but in counties, in cities around the nation.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder too, what we probably for another day is talk to more of the implications. I mean, I think we need to rebuild the wall of church, the church and state. We are concerned. We're seeing this kind of move to theocracy, and we talked about the fascism today. They're definitely related, this rise of the white Christian nationalism, and really what's going on is coming after women and our rights. And so I'm so glad you were here today. And when we talk about how we can help you, let's do a fast roundup with that, and we can put those links in the chat, or Kimberly, ways to help with you guys with your new organization and so on.
Yeah, we're very new. We just launched publicly about 2 weeks ago, so we're still really in a resource building. So if our website's in the chat, we're looking for both people to visit to both sign up for our updates, donate, and if you are in Southwest Virginia, we will be looking for volunteers for various aspects of our work. And we also do have a Amazon wish list that we use to help patients and to do some of the other initiatives around comprehensive reproductive health care education in our community. So any of those would be very welcome at this point. Yeah. Okay. And we will post again, these ordinances, the ordinances it's kind of been a stop and start sort of thing. So when we feel like there's a good opportunity for a rally, we will reach out and let people know if people wanted to come and stand with us. But we absolutely believe that it's most important for residents to be speaking out on this issue.
Yeah. And Cheryl, being a resident, handling this at the local level, I'm sure that's very important. Any last follow-up, Cheryl?
Just plan on watching us reach out and grow.
Okay.
We're super excited. We talked to someone even a day ago where they were doing some reproductive healthcare and education, and they're starting to see a gap. And they said, we're not going to be able to do as much. And we said, that's okay. We're willing to step into any voids we find here.
Great.
We're really willing to move forward. And I'm retired. So the good news is I'm happily retired with a lot of money because I had full reproductive health rights. And I'm able to put almost 100% of my time into this. I do some things for the unhoused population here too. That's another point of, we believe in all of life,
right,
and a good life for everyone, for the mother, for the infants, for the adults. I have children and grandchildren that are females. So it's kind of this thing is, we shouldn't be fighting this fight, but if you want to fight me, have at us.
Have at us. I love it. Okay. And lastly, Reverend.
Well, there's actually a few things your listeners can do for us. First, if you're close enough to get here, we are at the southern tip of the state. Our public hearing on this ordinance is going to be December 14th. They have let Mark Lee Dixon speak at every Board of Supervisors meeting. Therefore, I think if your listeners come down here for this public hearing, they cannot be denied the right to speak. So you don't necessarily have to be a resident of Grayson County. So that's number one. Please come to this public hearing and show your support. And I'll put people up at Oracle campus.
Oh, yes. Great.
Yeah, we've got a whole campus. We've got a retreat center here. The other thing is the Women of Faith and Fury campaign includes an abortion fund. This is very important. If I end up having to sue on this ordinance, your listeners need to know that I think I'm the only person with the courage to do that. We either have to find a young woman who is ordered, Plan C and is willing to go through the drama of a lawsuit, and that is highly, highly unlikely, or the statute captures aiders and abettors.
Right.
And ministers have been found to be assisting in that regard. So when you donate to our abortion fund, you are helping me gain legal standing to sue.
All right.
And this is very important because I don't think anyone else down here is going to have standing to sue.
All right. Well, it's really important. So yeah, let's wrap up. We need to get to the other segments and we'll be in touch. And so please, everybody give this, support the Peace Pentagon, support. I think what you're doing is really going to be important, and it is important. Thank you, ladies, for really, really caring about women and girls and health and fighting and defending democracy. We really appreciate what you're doing. And next up, Robin, take it away. We really want to talk about the Power Lunch for just a brief little segment. If you want to bring yourself up, Robin, and let's talk about you, baby. Let's talk about where you at, Robin. There she is. Oh, you're muted. I have to ask you to unmute. I don't think I ever have in my life.
Well, there you go. Well, we are so excited that we are expanding our crew. People, we're looking for people to help us find fabulous guests to be on the program. How fun is that? To help with behind the scenes, to spread the word about the show, such as we know social media is important, but we also know how important it is to just spread the word among our groups. To be part of our writing team. We send out a lot of emails. We need help writing the emails, proofing the emails. So if you watch this show and have ideas about this would be a great segment, or you know who they should have on the show, they should have A, B, and C. Or wouldn't it be great if they did this? Well, this is your opportunity to be in the room where it happens. Now, if you'd like to be a volunteer, email us. Email me at robin@networknova.org, and we'll start with a conversation. This isn't a full-time gig. It's what can you do? What would you like to do? We're looking for some more badass women who want to help amplify the voice of the Virginia grassroots. So, or you can direct message me in the chat, which some people are already doing, because our community is just so damn smart.
We have so much fun too, and it's fun, and it's just great to have to build out the team, because we're just doing this every week, and it is so much fun because people bring their skill and expertise to it, and we love it. And I
forgot one thing. I forgot that we're also looking for someone to help with the badass briefing that comes out on Thursday. So also, if you're interested in that, let us know.
Sarah would love that. She's a badass. She writes that every week, and there's always great information to put in there. So great. So let's get to the next segment, Robin. I would love it to bring up, I think a lot of people are in the room also to hear from these great candidates. Jade Harris, she's in Senate District 3, Emily Scott, Senate District 1, Jennifer Wolfter, Delegate District 52. And with all the redistricting, there is that. So I would like once we bring everybody up, I know we're spotlighting. Here's Jennifer. And then lastly, Emily, I want to go around just quickly and introduce yourself and your district. Because I know that when we bunch everybody up, we say we're having rural candidates on. I'm sure it drives you crazy too, because what does that mean for you? Where are you? Tell us a little bit about you. So let's start with Jade. Jade, introduce yourself and tell us about your district.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Jade Harris, Democratic nominee for Senate District 3. My district is massive. I did some math. It's about the size of Puerto Rico. The I-81 corridor runs all the way through it. And so it's got the northern and western portions of Roanoke County, all of Botetourt County, all of Craig County, all of Rockbridge County, all of Allegheny County, the southern portion of Augusta County, the cities of Stanton, Waynesboro, Buena Vista, and Covington.
That is like a geography lesson in Virginia. You know, when we're talking to the Reverend and she's talking about Grayson, that's the tip of Southwest Virginia. I mean, and where you are is different. So let's go to Emily, because you're both Senate, so you're going to have bigger areas to cover. Emily, it's not your first rodeo. It's not Jade's first rodeo either. So introduce yourself and tell us about your district.
Okay. I'm Emily Scott, and I'm running from the 1st Senate District, and it includes Frederick County, Clark County, Warren County, City of Winchester, and Shenandoah County. So it's kind of an odd mix. There are plenty of blue people there, but it's mostly bright red, and it is, there again, huge. And
How many thousands of people when you say huge, bigly? I mean, how big is it? Like, when we talk about a Senate district in a rural area, how many people are you going to represent?
You know, I don't know. That's a terrible thing to say, but I really don't know. I'm just like the rabbits in Watership Down, lots.
A lot of people.
We have 2 cities, and fortunately, the city of Winchester and Front Royal are included. But it's an odd juxtaposition with the city of Winchester and then Shenandoah County, which is very rural, and Winchester, which is the fastest growing city in the state. So it'll be a real interesting race. We have a path to win, believe it or not, even though if you look at the figures, people think it's mostly red in past elections, but there are enough Democrats for us to win. So we have to get that vote out.
Well, that's it. And I think, this is the point of when we're really looking at the whole of Virginia and all the districts, it is for this election is really talking to our voters. And that's why, having you guys come in and talk about these issues, because I think we can get more people out to vote. It's just talking to them. And it's hard though in rural areas. So Jennifer, let's go to you. You're in a delegate seat, a little bit more manageable. And I'm sure when you were thinking about coming back, because I was like waiting to see what you would do. Give us some of your background, because like I said, it's not your first rodeo, and what got you back into running again, and just introduce yourself to the audience and then talk about your district.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Jennifer Woofter. I'm so pleased to be here. I ran for the first time in the old House District 22, which was tremendously gerrymandered. It ran from the racially gerrymandered parts of the city of Lynchburg, sort of across over towards Smith Mountain Lake. So parts of Campbell, Bedford, and Franklin counties. It was about a 30% Democrat, 70% Republican district. So when you run in a district like that, you run because somebody should run and because people deserve a voice. And we should never leave ballots unchallenged. That is how we give up when we do that. So I am so grateful to people who are brave enough and determined enough to put their names out there on the ballot and do the hard work, even when it is an uphill battle. With redistricting this last go around, they finally reversed the racial gerrymandering in the city of Lynchburg and put the city back into a single district. So while I am a rural candidate, my district is actually relatively urban. It's the city of Lynchburg, plus a little slice, just 2 precincts out in Campbell County, directly adjacent to the city. While they are rural, they think of themselves as Lynchburg people. And that has dramatically shifted the demographics of the district. Now, if you just go by registered voters, it's about 55% Republican, 45% Democrat. But we know only about a third of people of registered voters show up to vote in state elections, which means it is anybody's game. We don't have to persuade Republicans to come out and vote in order to win. We just have to get Democrats, who usually sit out races that don't have a congressional or a senatorial or a presidential name on that ballot. We just have to convince them that the fight is worth it. And there is a path to victory for us.
Yeah. Especially when we're talking about what, how it impacts their lives. And I think that's really important. So let's start with Jade. When we're talking about this subject, abortion is on the ballot. What does that mean for you in your district? What is your, when you look at this issue and being on the ballot, how are you talking about that in your race? And then just in general, what are you hearing at the, when you talk to people about this issue? Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Jade.
Okay. I think I kind of heard the question. You were cutting out for a second.
Oh, was that maybe it was my internet? Who knows?
It was probably mine, but
I'm just saying, let's talk about abortion being on the ballot. What does that mean in your district and in your race? And how are you handling it?
I'm talking to voters about this is a really interesting thing, because for a lot of them, they have this, and especially in my area, they have this almost shock response that you're openly talking about abortion in this area. But once the conversation is started, that's when the work really starts getting done. You start changing hearts and minds when you tell them, hey, it's already hard enough to have a child in this area. For example, I live in Rockbridge County. If you want to have a child, you have to travel an hour in either direction, north or south. There's nowhere to give birth in Rockbridge County anymore. There used to be, but no longer. For abortion care, it's even harder. You have to go all the way down to Roanoke. And so if you eliminate abortion care, and I tell them, it's not just abortion care that's going to leave. It's going to be access to birth control. It's going to be these medical providers that provide these essential screenings that we already don't have enough access to as it is here. And so when you open the conversation with that and you let people know all the things that are at risk, not just abortion, they really start thinking. And once you get people thinking, that's half the battle.
Yeah. Emily, what is happening in your district when you're talking about abortion being on the ballot?
I've oddly had very positive response from all women. I've had one woman who handed my literature back. And mostly what I talk about is I tell them that I'm supporting a woman's right to choose. That's the first language that we use. And women kind of like that. It sounds empowering in the first place. In the second place, nobody really wants to give up their autonomy. And that's the way we're talking about it. And I've been talking about it in terms of anything that tells women what to do with their health care, whether it's abortion, whether it's birth control, anything that we have to deal with. If you legislate it, that makes women second-class citizens. And that's just wrong. And when you explain this to women who are kind of questioning, they see it. It's really not about, abortion isn't about killing babies. This is about telling women to sit down and shut up. I mean, that's pretty much what it's all about. And when you talk it through, people understand that. Women really grasp onto it, and a lot of men too, because a lot of men appreciate female autonomy.
Right. Yes, exactly. That's a great way to frame it up. And Jennifer, in your district, I mean, you're close to Lynchburg, like you said, more of an urban area. I'm assuming more close to maybe a college, correct? So
that's right. With the 800-pound gorilla is Liberty University, right? In my district.
That's a big gorilla.
And an extremely politically active white evangelical community. And that makes it very interesting. I think it's, if you talk to my state Senate Democratic candidate counterpart, Donna St. Clair, she is out there abortion forward, right? Abortion, gun safety. She is out there speaking very aggressively and very confrontationally, right? She thinks that is it's so important to just put it straight out there. And I think my tactic is maybe a little bit differently. I am absolutely not ashamed or hesitant to say that, but I will often pick my battles. There's, especially in a rural race where you're not getting a lot of support from the state party, or the national part, right? You never have enough volunteers. Like you really are stretched quite thin. A lot of the responsibility for campaigning falls on the candidate herself. And I try to be really cognizant of how many hours in the day do I have, and really trying to not waste my time trying to defend or advocate for our rights for people who just don't want to listen. Right. That is the job of another time for me, not during this election, not when I'm the candidate. I'm really focused on those people in the middle who are thinking like, well, maybe I personally wouldn't get an abortion, but do I want the government telling me if I should get an abortion? Here in our area, and I would suspect in other rural regions of Virginia, a conversation that says, how much do you trust the government to make good decisions for you?
There you go. Right?
Like there's a lot of distrust here about government and saying like, yeah, I mean, I hear that, right? Like that it's scary to sort of like put important decisions about your life in the hands of government somewhere else in the state. It's scary to me to think that we might do that about medical choices or medical decisions. And that sometimes provides a little wiggle room, a place of more common understanding. I always try to find what's the shared value, right? Is it that we really care about kids? You're right. I really care about kids too, right? I really care about families too. Particularly when I ran in 2019, it was surprising to me to be confronted several times over the course of the campaign with this idea of like, Jennifer, you are a baby killer. You want to kill babies after they are born, this post-birth abortion.
That in the presidential campaign even, right?
Like, and I'm not hearing it as much this time around, probably because we just, it's a sort of a different space. But looking at people and being like, my kid's in the classroom. Like, look in the eye, Bob. Do you really think that's what I believe? And just sort of in a non-hostile, non-confrontational, but I try as much as I can to stay in a place of open curiosity. Like, what, what would make you believe that that's something I would stand for? I find create space to have a conversation where if you just went in, you're trying to take away my rights, or abortion should have no restriction. Like, I find that trying to find that soft space can go a lot further.
Right. So Jade, when you're listening to that, what are some of those unique things that you bring to this conversation or really helps you when you're talking to voters that would help, that is interesting?
Oh, well, you know, for one thing, my youth. So I'm pretty young. I'm right there in those in that age range where if I were to get pregnant, I mean, I could, first of all. So that brings a different context to things. People see me and they are not seeing like someone who's like an older person running for office or anything like that. They see me and they see their neighbor. They see their child's classmate. I mean, I went to high school with so many people around here. I went to college with so many people around here. They see someone that is honestly a part of their community. And when you're a part of a community, that's where the bridges start being built. That's where the conversations really start being able to happen. And I think that's the unique thing that I bring to the table, especially in discussions about abortion.
Yeah, I agree. And Emily, listening to Jennifer and Jade, what would you add to this conversation that you think when you're thinking about your district, or some unique perspective that you have when you really address this issue?
Well, pretty much it just comes down to women's freedom. And I think that Jennifer made a very good point about, do you trust the government to take care of your health care? And we've been kind of harping on that topic, talking about your freedom to do what you want to do without government interference, because that's the language they appreciate here, is government without government interference. And you know, quite honestly, it really has not gotten as animated as it was when I ran against Todd Gilbert. I mean, obviously Todd is a very anti-abortion candidate, but I keep bringing it around to this is about putting women back in their place. I try to stay away from the actual biological aspect and talk about how, Roe v. Wade allowed women to go to work. It allowed, it allowed women personal autonomy. And it's
Right.
why they're allowed to do what they do today. And I think when you talk to older women about it, it makes them think. But
Right.
honestly, speaking of older women, I can't believe we're still here. I mean,
Right.
I just can't, as old as I am, I cannot believe we're still having this argument. And it's just, I guess it's backlash.
Well, really just a quick go around too. And I wanted, so we're talking about your opponent, and you're talking about, let's talk about just the politics around this now in Virginia in this election. Are you finding that your opponent is being quiet on this issue, and you need to make sure people understand why they need to come out and vote? What are you finding? Let's do a quick round. Jennifer, your opponent, the Republican plan that you see, and then basically, are they trying to sort of stay out of this? And so so voters won't really know why we need to take back the majority.
I mean, my opponent, who is a very gentle, nice man who has very extreme views. So I saw someone in the comments said, "Oh, Jennifer, I supported you in 2019 because you were running against Kathy Byron, who was like the promoter of the ultrasound bill, if you remember back when." Well, Wendell Walker, my current opponent, sponsored a bill to try to get the right to life enshrined in the Virginia Constitution. So different opponent, same extreme perspectives. I mean, I think he's very, very nice, but leads with, I've got my New Testament and I've got my Constitution in my pocket at all times.
Yeah.
It is really challenging, I think, to here in particular to debate or have nuanced conversations on issues where the opposition or the Republican Party doesn't immediately go back to an evangelical Christian nationalist worldview. And I think that makes it particularly difficult here to even just sort of stay on topic. Right. It's not about abortion. It's about what Jesus said or what somebody said in Leviticus. It's not about gun safety. It's about our freedoms. Like just trying to
definitely surround the floor. Yeah, you're surrounded by Liberty University. I can hear it. You're really surrounded by it's funny because we know even in some areas where I was canvassing, that university puts out a lot of canvassers, by the way, even in our urban areas, we've found them at the doors. So Jade, and for you, what are you finding from your opponent? Are you finding Republicans are trying to be quiet on this, or what are you hearing?
Well, my opponent was one of the sponsors of the transvaginal ultrasound bill back in the day. And he doesn't like to run on that, it seems, but he is very much, I am pro-God, pro-guns, pro-babies. I'm a staunch supporter of pro-life policies, and he makes it very cute in his advertisements with little babies running around. But he doesn't talk about how he wanted to institute this policy in our Commonwealth that would amount to medical sexual assault. He doesn't run like that, even though he really should if he wants to be honest with his base, with the people he's seeking to represent. By the way, I do want to say that my opponent really isn't seeking to represent the people. He's come out and said multiple times that he's going to vote the way that he wants to, that his heart leads him to, that his religion, his faith leads him to, ignoring everybody else, ignoring the over 100,000 people in this district. They're not important. It's all about him.
Well, yes, it sounds like it, but that's a really good point you bring up. Emily, we want to wrap up. So do you have any last words on this with your opponent, what you're finding that the messaging is on this?
Well, my opponent's definitely pro-life. He's the youngest of 10 children. So he's
happy. He's the youngest of 10.
But I think, quite honestly, when people use the religious argument, I always explain to them or try to get them to understand that Jesus was silent on abortion, A, and B, there's a prescription for abortion in Exodus. And I think that if people really knew their Bible, they would understand that actually God isn't so strong on abortion. The Bible says that a woman is more important than the fetus. and I try to be very calm and not too preachy about it, but understanding those few points kind of helps you when you're talking to people who don't really understand what it's all about.
And I agree with this lack of what you've all even brought up too, just the lack of medical services in these areas. And you are running because you care, and you care about your constituents, and you care about all of them. And I know, these issues is really important because it's not just abortion on the ballot. We went through healthcare, and remember how the healthcare fight, the Medicaid fight. Democrats are trying to deliver these services. This to make life better, like somebody said, just to really, I think it was the Reverend who's talked about, or Cheryl talked about, really caring about people. I mean, and life, clean water, good jobs, the whole strength of that. And what we find is that there's just this focus on the culture wars. Republicans really don't have anything good to sell, right? And I think getting to our Democratic voters is really important that are in your district. But also, I just want to say thank you for coming today. And I hope you can stay a few minutes in the after chat. We need to wrap up because there's an article that came out by Why Dems Are Struggling in Rural Areas, such a big topic. But if we're in the after chat, I'd like to talk a little bit about that because I think it's been on everybody's mind. We always talk about rural, and I'd like to unpack that a little bit more if we can on the other side, if you can stay a few minutes. All righty. So my goodness, thank you to all the guests today, Jade Harris, Emily Scott, Jennifer Woofter. Let's give them a round of applause. I mean, running out in these areas is not easy. It's money, it's time away from your family. And I think what we need to do is we really need to celebrate and care for our candidates out there. So if you can drop a couple bucks in their Act Blue, please do today. It's just really important because when we are in these areas, Democrats get their messaging out, and voters feel like they have somebody to vote for. And obviously people that run these areas care very much about their whole community. They just feel like they have better policies to address those. So thank you to the candidates coming today. I know your time is precious. Thank you to Kimberly Smith and also CHERYL Wade Hazlick and also the Reverend Laura George for being here today. It's just been an awesome show. Abortion is on the ballot.